Good evening. Thanks, Terry. Appreciate that. My name's Lisa Meffert, and I work at the Bureau of Trails as the program specialist, as Terry said. I'm responsible for the grant and aid program. I manage all of the applications, send them out to the clubs, review them when they come in. And then I let clubs know if they get awards, and then I process payments to them. And that's a very brief overview of what I do for the program. And I have other duties that I do for the Bureau. So we'll go right into the grant and aid program presentation, Dan. The grant and aid program was established through RSA 215A2. It's a fish and game RSA, and that established the Bureau of Trails. And then in their RSA 215A3, 3 and 215C3-2, that actually gave us the authority as the Bureau to make the grant and aid rules. Dan's gonna take us, the last time the rules were changed, you all set? The last time the rules were changed was in June 15th, 2015. The biggest change in that rules was the terms of ownership that was added regarding equipment. What happened then was it was established that when clubs purchased equipment using grant and aid funds, we had to process a lien, and we have ownership of the equipment based on the class. Class 1 and 2 and drags, 7 years from purchase we own. Class 3, 4, and 5, if they're purchased new, 7 years and an additional 3 hours. And class 3, 4, and 5 purchase used, 5 years and additional hours. We always had it in our rules that we had to have liens, but it wasn't enforced until June 15th because JELCAR, the Joint Legislative Committee on Rules, suggested that we start actually placing those liens. Each one costs $48 and is paid out of the grant and aid funds. So that's the last time the rules were changed. I have a couple of questions here that were submitted in writing prior to the webinar, and they're regarding the rules, so I'm going to address those now. One of the questions was that 8403, our rule, states grant and aid applications pursuant to RES 8405.01 for projects to be accomplished during the upcoming winter season shall be submitted no sooner than September 1st and no later than October 15th of each year. And the questioner wanted to know why this year's applications are due October 9th. And that reasoning is because the application has to be sent out and sent back to us between those 2 dates, September 1st and October 15th. So it's not that it has to be sent out and due after the 15th. Okay. The GIA program has all of the information regarding it is on a web page that you put that up already, Dan? Yep. Yeah, okay, thank you. Sorry, this is my first webinar. This page right here is where you want to go to learn everything about the grant and aid program. I put all the forms out there that need to be filled out. There's awards, Dan, you can scroll down. There's right there above awards is the a link to our rules that tells you all about the grant and aid rules and the RSAs that established us. Then all the awards that have been listed back to 2016 there, those you'll see are both for snowmobile and OHRV. It's just a general location. And then if you go down, you see that we've got a section where you can actually have your groomers go out into YouTube and take the groomer certification test there, view the video, take the test, and submit it into our office. We also have the snowmobile trail signing guidelines down there and the workshop certification list of who's taken those workshops. This is the important section, the forms section. This is where all of your forms for grant and aid live. And you can just click on any of those items and they'll open right up. Most of them are form fill-in. Little bit about grant and aid program funding. All the funds are derived from snowmobile registrations. They're collected and allocated to separate state programs. They cannot be used for anything else other than the grant and aid program. The grant and aid awards are based on anticipated registrations that we sell. The monies from previous years have already been spent. And if we don't sell enough registrations during the year for grants that we've already awarded, we may have to cut grants during that grant cycle. A couple more questions that came in through writing regarding funding. Somebody wanted to know if the pandemic has affected our funding at all. Because our funding is based on how many registrations we're going to sell this coming season, I can't tell you whether our funds are going to increase or decrease. What I can tell you is that it's affected the price of materials. So it's affected the clubs in their approved projects for this summer. A lot of the pressure treated wood is 3 times what it used to be, if you can even find it. And we're working with the clubs to allow them to buy lesser quality wood like hemlock or something. What that means is that obviously a bridge isn't going to last as long. So we'll end up funding a redo of that project a lot sooner. It also means that the clubs are having to find ways to come up with money to meet those increased costs or not be able to do their projects. We're skipping into the grant and aid application, but let's take a break. This is where I wanted to talk about, see if anybody had any questions so far. Another question that I had in writing was, have there been any changes to the program in the last year in regards to process, forms, timelines, etc.? The only thing that really jumps out to me is within the last year or two, we've changed the application to remove the financial page that clubs used to fill out. We did that because we weren't using that information to determine grant award amounts, and it was a lot of extra work for the clubs to fill that information in. And at this point in time, pretty much every snowmobile club needs financial assistance. So it's really being based on a matter of priority as to project. The application signature page has also changed. There used to be an area for the county advisors to sign off on it, and we removed that from the application. The reason is it was very hard for clubs to fill out their applications and plan county meetings and attend county meetings and get it all done by the timeline of having the application back, which is about a month that we give them. We do still strongly suggest that clubs notify their advisors as to any projects, applications that they're submitting, so that their advisors can advocate for them if need be. Another change is that some of the reimbursement requests, before everything used to be submitted to me hard copy in the mail. And I'd say over the past year, I've started taking things via email, which helps clubs a lot and helps timeliness, saves paper, those type of things. Applications themselves can't be submitted that way because we have to have the original signatures, contracts, those type of things. But I get a lot of billing reimbursement requests that way. Another change that's happened to the program is behind the scenes that none of you see, and because of COVID, a lot of state workers are working at home or in different locations. So that process has changed, where I used to deal a lot with my reimbursement paperwork in person. I'm now emailing a lot of things and waiting for them to email me back with responses. Those are really the only changes that I can think of in regards to the program process and forms and timelines. Do you have any questions at this point regarding the rules or the legislation or anything? Nope, doesn't look it. Okay. We'll go right into the grant application process then. Oh, we got a raised hand. Hold on just one moment.
This is Naomi.
We're trying to get to your
I
question.
don't
Naomi.
see it. You see it?
No?
The hand was raised.
Oh.
It said Naomi.
If you go into the Q&A section, there's a little icon for Q&A. You can type your question and Lisa can then read it to everybody and answer the question.
Oh, here we go. Lisa, will we be able to get a copy of this presentation? Good question. Yes, this presentation will be on the Grant and Aid webpage. And are you going to also put it out on your site? I might put it out probably on our Facebook page, and I believe NHSA is going to put it out there as well.
It'll be on the NHSA YouTube channel.
YouTube,
And from
okay.
there, anyone could share it with their club.
Okay.
It'll also be linked to our website and maybe the Bureau website.
Yep, it'll definitely be on our Bureau website. Yep. Oh, we got another one.
Read the person's name.
Ooh, that's a great question.
Yeah.
Can you read that for me?
Can we still drop off our winter grant aid applications at the Bureau of Trails office in person?
You can drop it off there. The only thing is that our office is not open. There's a buzzer by the door, and if you ring that buzzer, most likely Suzanne will come out and she'll take it from you. You can only do that between the hours of 8 and 4, but you can drop it off there.
Great question.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, let's move on to the grant application process then. I know we're currently in the application part. There's 2 application processes, and we're currently in the one for snowmobile grooming. The other one is the summer snowmobile trail maintenance, construction, and equipment. Applications, I emailed them out to the clubs along with what to include with their packets. They're not usually on the website. I did put the grooming application out on the website for tonight so that we can go through that briefly. Explanation of those 2 programs. Summer one. The summer grant period is to assist snowmobile clubs with summer trail maintenance and or construction projects and their purchase or refurbishment of equipment. That means to assist clubs with making a new trail, building a new bridge, fixing the decking on a bridge, those type of things. Purchasing new groomers, although our funds are not really there to help a lot of clubs do that, you can apply for that. Applications for that summer period are emailed to clubs in April, and they're usually due back in May. Like I said before, we give you about a month to do them. Then the Bureau and the Grant and Aid Advisory Committee will meet in May, and they'll go over all of the applications and determine what funds we have and who we can assist. And I'll notify you usually in June if you've been awarded a grant. At the same time that I'm doing those notifications, I'm usually creating a governor and council request because all of our grants have to go before the New Hampshire Governor and Executive Council to be approved before I can actually get accounts established and start paying your grants out. Also at that time, I'm in the process of making all of those contracts with you. So I'm creating them and then I'm mailing them out to you, asking you to notarize them and send the originals back to me. This is one of the instances where we cannot use email. When I get them back, I send them to the Attorney General's office who has to sign off on them. Then once GNC approves them, I can send them to finance and they can establish accounts for you. The summer grant period usually starts, it's usually around June or July 1st is when the governor and council will approve it, and it ends December 31st. The next one is the winter, whoops, the next slide.
Is it that one?
Yeah, next slide.
Okay.
Is the winter snowmobile grooming application, which is the one that we're currently in. And that is for grooming. It's to help clubs with funding of their gas to groom the trails. You can also assist them in regards to plowing parking lots that are used by riders. And I send those out to the clubs, usually end of August, beginning of September. You should already have yours. And they're due back this Friday. Then we're going to meet with the Grant and Aid Advisory Club, hopefully, that's our usual process, in October, and make our determinations, and you'll be notified by November whether you have an award and how much it will be. We'll take it to Governor and Council on December, and hopefully it'll get approved, and we'll be able to let you know to start grooming on December 15th. Those grants go through May 31st. You've got to make sure that you get your grant application, not your application, excuse me, your grant contract or agreement, we call it, back to me timely, because that whole process of it going from you to me, to the Attorney General, back to me, and then to finance can take a few weeks, and that means I can't pay you if you start grooming right away. So it's really important to get that back timely. Dan, if you could go out to the Grant and Aid webpage at this point, which is what I briefly showed you earlier. We have an application out there. Okay, and this is this year's application for grooming. And we'll just scroll through this a little bit, Dan. The first part, as you can see, is basically all the club information. That club address is the address that you have registered with the Secretary of State for your vendor code. That's very important. Don't put down an address that's a club member's address unless it's what is used with the state for your vendor code. Then we have the president and the trail administrator's contact information. I, every year, update the Bureau's contacts with this information. And this is, you know, utilized often to get in touch with the president or the trail master if there's questions in regards to their grants or grooming, or anybody has a trail question. So this is really important to have correct information there as well. The second page of the application tells us, it's a brief overview of your system, what corridors you have, what primary trails you have, how many miles, who utilizes your trails, that type of thing. Can you scroll down for me, please? Section 3 is the groomer logbook. It's important that you fill this out for how many groomer books you need for each groomer that you might have. And we'll fill that order back at the office, and then we'll deliver those to you. We just got in all of our order of groomer logbooks from the printer, so we're thinking that we're going to put those with your trail signs when we distribute your trail signs to you. Okay. The meat of the application is this part here, the winter grooming. This top part tells you everything that needs to be with your application. Your landowner permission is required. You want to make sure that you have a list submitted of all your landowners. It needs to be up to date and indicate whether it's written or verbal. This is how your landowners are insured. So with the Bureau's insurance policy. So if we don't have somebody on a landowner list, they're not covered if an accident happens on their property. So we need to have this every year. A GPS Quality Club trail map. We ask that you send us a hard copy of it. You don't have to read GPS every year. We only need information that yearly that's for new trails, which I believe you provide to NHSA as well. Certificate of liability. Most clubs have insurance through NHSA with Allied. So if they do, they don't have to do anything. Allied Insurance sends me a list every year of what equipment is insured for each club. But if you do not go through NHSA and Allied, then I do need a certificate of insurance from your insurance company. And that is because I cannot reimburse clubs any money for grooming unless the equipment is insured. A sample of a grooming schedule. We know that grooming depends on the conditions, the weather conditions, the amount of snow, whether you have volunteers, those type of things. So it can always change. But we just ask for kind of a sample as to what you think you might be doing if all of those things were perfect. And a current certificate of good standing. These are supposed to be submitted with your spring application, your summer application. And if you have submitted them, I have a file where I keep them and I know. But if you did not submit them in the summer, maybe because you didn't apply for a project, then you would have to submit it with this grooming application. You can go right on to the Secretary of State's new website, Quick Start, and there's a link right there for it. And it's all electronic now. You don't have to wait for anything in the mail. You don't have to go down there and stand in line anymore. You pay for it online. You're able to print it right there. I think it's $7. And then this is where you start putting the equipment that you're going to use in the first column. So that might be your groomer over there with a 10-foot drag, the class that is, which a class 5 groomer would be a 10-foot drag. How many miles you're requesting to groom, how many hours you're requesting to groom, the equipment rate, and then it should auto-calculate if you're in the right version of Adobe. Sometimes you have to do that calculation. That's for each piece of equipment that you plan on using for grooming. Brings us to section 5, which is the parking lot plowing. A lot of our parking lots, clubs will plow, and they can put in for money to get those parking lots plowed. If it's an existing business that needs to have that lot plowed anyhow in order to run their business, then we probably wouldn't consider that. But if it's something where it's maybe a club parking lot or a business that's only summer and they let you use the lot in the winter, that would be something that would be acceptable. The biggest problem I have with this is that a lot of people will get a quote, or a lot of clubs, excuse me, will get a quote from a vendor to plow, and I have to have a vendor's bill presented to me, and I can only pay 50% of that bill. And the vendor's bill will end up being different than what they put on the application. So I've calculated what I'm going to give them as a grant award based on this application, and there's not enough money, or there's too much money, or something to that effect. So you really need to make sure that you get your vendor quote and you put it on this form, what you're going to pay to have that lot plowed. Your plow bills should be submitted. Well, we'll go over that when we do the reimbursement process, but as you can see there, it says do not hold all plow bills till the end of the year. They need to be submitted monthly. Then this all auto calculates. This is where you're putting how much your vendor's charging you, and it will divide it by 2 to get your 50%. And it adds it to your grooming costs, your grooming requests, and it gives the total grant and aid request that you're requesting for the winter season. Okay. This is the signature page that's signed by the trail administrator, who's the one who's authorized to sign agreements on behalf of the club, and the club president. And that's the end of the application. Is this a question over there that we want to address at this time?
If you'd like.
Yeah, is it regarding the application?
Yes, well, definitely looks like it impacts this year's question for sure.
Okay.
This is from Naomi Bolton.
Yeah.
She writes, each year we're required to submit a digital trail map. If the trail map hasn't changed in the last 5 to 6 years, do we still need to include one?
Yes.
And the second question that she had in there was regarding winter grant aid. Last year's clubs were trimmed regarding the totals. With the increase in hours for the groomers, in the increase in per hours for the groomers, I'm guessing she meant rate. Are we to submit the same number of hours, or do we figure out the hours that would get us close to the total from last year? Example, if you receive 12K for a total based on the old rates, do we use the same number of hours or reduce the hours to get in line with the 12K? So I believe she's asking.
Yeah, I understand what she's.
The dollar amount should be higher,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Same hours.
Yes, same hours.
Last year.
Correct.
After approval last year.
Yes.
And then she had a third
That's
question.
my understanding. Yes.
If the owner of a property changes hand during the winter, is that landowner still covered?
Yes, as long as you send us the information.
You're willing to take it all the time, correct?
All the time, yes. It's just once a year that you have to actually give me a complete list. But if we're in February and somebody sells their land and there's a new landowner, just send me an email with that new land, tell me who to take off the list and the information of the new owner, and we just take that email and we staple it to your landowner list in the file so that they're covered. And then the expectation obviously would be that the year after that, they're on the list. Is that it? Hopefully that answers your questions, Naomi. Hi, thanks for asking them.
Any other questions while we're right at a break in the action?
Regarding the application? Yeah. Or the quick start? Does anybody have an,
Oh, we have
what's
another
that?
one. Brian Lamarche says, you recently mentioned the groomer logs will be moving to an electronic format. Any updates on that?
I don't think I've mentioned that. As far as I'm aware, Brian, we're not doing any grooming electronically. It's still all going to be manual, unfortunately. And we supply those groomer logbooks to you so that your staff can fill them out. It would cost a lot of money if are electronic systems out there that we can put into groomers that would, electronically collect all that data and transfer it to us for payment. But that's a very large expense that I don't think the program is ready to delve into at this time.
And Amy Falconer asks, is there an advantage of a club pulling a 10-foot drag versus a 9-foot drag?
Well, yeah, the trail's going to be wider, right? Can you address that? I mean, I would think that that's the main thing, is that the trail would be larger, plus they're also going to be getting more money for that grooming, right?
And I mean, I shouldn't ask it, but my guess would be it was a question about the rate, and the rate is higher on 10
Oh,
foot versus
absolutely.
9.
Yeah. Real quick, I can give it to you, and the rate sheets have been sent out to the clubs. With an 8-foot drag, it's going to be $61 this year.
On a class 5.
Yeah, on a class 5. Yep, these are all class 5s. Yep. And then if you went to the, did she say 10 foot? Yep, 10-foot drag, you're talking $72.20 an hour. Okay. Want to jump back in then? Okay. This is a slide that shows you what needs to be submitted with your application, which we already went over. The summer, obviously, is the application, the sign order form. This is when we find out what kind of trail signs you want to put up for the next fall. We have to get them in the summer because we have to go out to RFP and get a vendor and pick a vendor, and then we have to send them the order, and then they have to actually produce the signs. That's where we are right now in the process, is the signs are being printed. They'll come into our location at Bear Brook, and then we'll make sure that all of the clubs have them boxed up what they're supposed to get. This year, I'm going to put the grooming log books with them. Usually we deliver those signs at the Trail Master meeting to clubs. This year, we're probably looking at have our regional, Mike, Sean, and Clint, take the signs for their areas and distribute them to the clubs, or have the clubs come and get them at one location. Certificate of good standing, we spoke about that already, and if you submit that in the summer, then you don't need to submit it in the winter. Okay. Next slide. This is the actual link to the Secretary of State's Quick Start program, where you can go and get that certificate of good standing that we spoke about, and it's all done online, and it's $7. This is what you include with your winter grooming application. The application, your map, the grooming schedule, certificate of good standing, and your insurance information in your landowner list. So that's just in writing so that you don't forget. Next slide. Okay, that takes us to the reimbursement process. So Before we start that, are there any other questions?
We have a couple.
Okay.
I think Amy was asking what the 9-foot price was, because you said 8 foot and then you went to
Yep.
10.
The 9-foot is $66.60.
That's the full grant aid rate, right? That's not the club reimbursement rate in the end. Am I correct on that?
No, that's the reimbursement rate.
That's the reimbursement rate
That's
to
the
the
new
club.
reimbursement rate, yes.
Okay.
Based on that increase from the increase in registration sales.
Just making
Yes.
sure that's clear.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Which takes us to, where did that come in? Confusion right there.
Jump ahead.
I think so. The
Reimbursement.
reimbursement process, thank you, okay. I've got my place now, sorry. Percentages of grant and aid. I just wanted to go over the percentages with you. We reimburse 100% for cost of materials for trail maintenance and construction. 60% of renting equipment to complete projects. That would be if your club is renting an excavator, or if you're transporting an excavator to a site. We reimburse 60% of the cost of purchasing trail grooming equipment. That's new drags, new groomers, new Scandics. 75% refurbing trail grooming equipment. And 70% cost of winter grooming. And that's based on the class rates. And you need to submit your logs in order to get that. And we've just did the increase, which is about 45% over last year's rates. And that was due to the legislation in Senate Bill 107 that increased the registration costs. 50% of the vendor charge per plow occasion, and we supply all of your trail signs, so it says 100% there. So those are the percentages that we reimburse. Now we're gonna move on to, this is the grooming rate sheet, the new one. Shows you the rates that clubs will be getting this season. Down on the bottom, you can see that it says that for class 3, 4, and 5s, you have to have operational hour meters in your equipment, and those readings are put on the logs and submitted. Your logs should be, well, we'll go to that when we get to the log section, sorry. The next one is the billing form. When you submit anything for payment, you have to fill out this form. Some people ask me, well, this title of this column doesn't say grooming. It's the same form that we use for either a construction project or grooming, so the titles aren't exactly accurate. You can find this on our Grant and Aid webpage. It's all form fill-in, so you just tab to each section and type it in. The TA has to sign off on this, and he needs to include copies of paid invoices. If it's a construction project, it would be your vendor invoice for gravel possibly. And you have to show proof of payment, which is either a copy of your bank statement showing that the payment has cleared, a copy of a canceled check, a charge receipt. Some clubs have charge cards that they'll go in and purchase materials with, those type of things. Grooming logs would be included with the billing form for grooming, and those are accepted between December 15th and January 1st. There must be at least 8 inches of continuous snow on the ground in order for clubs to groom and us to pay that. We ask that the reimbursements and all of their attachments be sent to the office by the 10th of the month for the previous month. So you would be submitting January's grooming by February 10th. At the same time, those plow bills should be submitted as well, and they would be on your billing form. You have to submit them in hard copy via mail to our office because of the logs at this point in time. This is a sample of an invoice, and what I've done is I've taken up there on the top, and you'll see the little call out boxes. I've showed you this is the invoice number, this is the date, And then down there is the amount charged to grant and aid. And then if we go to the next page, it's a billing form filled out, and it shows you where that information has been put. And that's just a sample to help you know how to fill out the form. Next one. These are just samples of canceled checks that you would include with it. A lot of this is a sample for your information, so you can reach back to it and you can go on. Cash advance option. Thank you, Dan. Some clubs, especially with summer, they don't have the funds to pay up front for all of their invoices for a project. So we did add into the rules the cash advance option. And what that means is that I can give you 75% of an expected cost up front. And then once you pay the vendor that 75% and show me proof of that payment, I can pay you the remaining 25%. That's helpful sometimes to clubs. It's a lot more paperwork for them, and it is more paperwork for me, but when you need the funds, that's how we're doing it right now. There's the same billing form is used. There's a little box on the right-hand side up under your, I think it's where the email address is, and you just check that off. In order to get a cash advance, you would send in this billing form filled out like that with the vendor invoice, a copy of the club's bank statements, and obviously a request saying, you know, we're requesting cash advance for this project because we can't fund it in full at this time. Okay. This is a sample of how to fill it out. You see the difference in red there. That's pointing to the little box area where you check it off for a cash advance. Go ahead. What is this? Oh, this is a sample that will show you how you fill out your second request when you want to get the remaining 25%. So you'd fill out your 75%. I'm going to ask the finance to send you a check. You get it. You pay the vendor. You send this billing form back with proof of payment to that vendor, and you get your 25%. These are samples of the grooming logs that will be in the books we distribute to you. On the left is the old version. We don't use that any longer. We now print the right-hand version. The information is pretty much the same. It's just in a different format that's easier, hopefully for the groomer operators to fill out and for us to check over. A lot of clubs still have old versions. They're welcome to still use them and send them in. Okay. This is a sample of how you would fill out a billing form for grooming logs. And you'll see those two descriptive lines. It gives the dates. So it would say the beginning of January to the end of January for groomer number, and it gives your number that is a fishing game trail maintenance registration number, class 5, and the total hours of all of the logs that you're going to attach to this billing form. Okay. These are samples of the logs that match up to the previous sample, just so you can take your time if you want and go through that and see that this is how a log should be filled out in relationship to the billing form that was before this. Okay. That's what all of these are. You can see that the groomer operator is supposed to put their name up at the top, the club name, the trails that they groom, and then there's your fishing game registration number of the groomer. There should be stickers on your groomers so that the operators can find that number easily. The make and model of it, and then you've got your a section where the drag that was used, because sometimes if you're using the 8, 9, or 10, the rate's going to be different for 5, or if you're just using a bar because you're trying to get the trails ready, that's a lower rate also. And then you've got your section where you're putting your actual meter readings in your total, or you're putting the hours if it's a class 1 and 2. Okay. These are more samples that relate back to that billing form so that you can take the time to look it all over. This is a Scandic example. There's no meter readings. There's just the total that you went, because Scandics are class 2, I believe. So they're not required to have operation hour meter readings. When I process any of your grant and aid payments, be it for trail construction, equipment, or grooming, I have account statements in Excel for each club, and where I enter what I've paid them, the invoice number and everything. And when I send it down to finance for them to actually make the payment, I'll email you an account statement like this. So you then know that I've submitted it to them for payment and how much you can expect to get in regards to that invoice number. I think this one here is the grooming one. So it has all the different grooming rates, and it will total up the hours of grooming you did for each class. At the end of the season, you'll have totals of all the grooming that you've done, that you submitted to us. So that brings us to a reimbursement timeline. From the time that I get packages in the office, we usually try to get them done within 2 weeks at the most of processing and sending them off to finance. It's really important that the trail administrators keep an eye out on their email, because that's how I communicate with you. And if I have any questions in regards to a bill, I'm going to send it to that email box. And then this just again reiterates that you'll get your account statement when I submit that. You should, if you have direct deposit, get your payment from finance, I would say probably within 3 days to a week of me submitting it to them. If you do not get your reimbursement, please contact me as soon as possible. Please do not wait until April and say we never got our March payment. That does happen, unfortunately, and we really need to take care of that as quickly as possible. Okay? And then this slide tells about direct deposit. When I started with the Bureau, most of the clubs did not have direct deposit. And what I kept seeing was that not only was it a time concern for the clubs, because they had to find a member who would go to the post office and get their check and then deposit it in the bank, but there were also lost checks. And then I would have to contact finance, they would have to cancel that, and they would have to reissue a check. So there was a lot of time on everyone's part involved in that. So I really started asking clubs that if it was at all possible to sign up for direct deposit. At this time, most of the clubs are. We still do have a handful maybe that aren't. So as the TA, you may want to check with your treasurer and see if you're signed up, and if you're not, maybe consider getting signed up. You do get notices from the Secretary of State's Treasurer's Office when they've deposited a payment into the bank's account. Okay. That's the end of the presentation. So I know I might have gone through that a little quickly. Do we have any questions in regards to the reimbursement process that I can help you with? What we got?
Naomi Bolton asks,
Yeah.
Is there a way of getting a copy of last year's winter grant and aid via email from you, Lisa? The revised one after the reductions of funds awarded. So she's looking for winter grant and aid, what they got last year after the hour reduction occurred.
Okay. I'm not quite sure. I can, Naomi, I can send you a copy of your account statement. Is that what you're looking for? That shows what you actually spent hours. It doesn't say approved hours on it, because we approve it by the money, and then that money is delved out into what kind of equipment the clubs are using. So I might give an award to a club for like $10,000, let's say, okay? But if they're using a class 1, they're gonna get more hours than if they're using a class 5. Does that make sense?
I think what Naomi probably wants then is the exact amount of money that she got last year. Yeah, so what I can do is I can give you, Naomi, a copy of your statement, your ending statement last year, and that will show you your
total award for that year, and then it will show you what you submitted for hours and what you were paid out, and if you had any money that you did not utilize, that money rolled back into grant and aid. Is that what you're looking for?
Well, I think what she's trying to figure out is likely
Mm-hmm.
how she can determine
Mm-hmm.
what she needs to ask for in dollars this year related to hours. So,
Mhm.
you know.
If she, on the application, if she puts the same hours,
But the application last year that she might be looking at,
she just said something.
see, says, we applied for 17K last year,
Yeah.
got reduced to 12K by
Yeah.
an amount. So they're trying to figure out what the 12K represented in hours, how you guys broke that up.
That depends on her equipment.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd have to calculate that for her.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think that's what she's looking for.
yeah,
And then she can then take those hours and
Yeah.
multiply that by the new rates,
Yes.
and that's the grant request that she
Okay.
would be sending you.
I'll look into that for you, Naomi.
Naomi, did we ask that, get your question right?
Yes, okay, thanks, Naomi. Any other questions? Doesn't look it. If you could go back to the grant and aid webpage.
one
Oh,
more.
yeah.
Brian Lamarche asks, when are all billing forms due for summer grant aid? Can we submit multiple billing forms as we complete individual projects to pay various bills?
Yes, I recommend that highly. Don't hold all of your vendor invoices until the end of the summer and submit them. Not only is it financially difficult for the club because you're not getting your money back quickly, but then I get everything in at once, and it's at the same time I'm trying to process all this grooming stuff.
So with that question, the first sentence basically is asking, when's the due date? When's the last day they can submit an invoice and get paid?
May 31st is when their summer, excuse me, that's OHRV, sorry.
Yeah, it'd be December
December
31?
31 is when your contract ends for your summer project.
Right, so can they send a
So
bill
you
10
can
days after
submit
that?
it about a week after that, I would accept it. But the best thing to do is as your project goes along, submit a billing form with that bill. Does that help you, Brian? That should answer it. Can we submit?
Yep.
Okay, good. Anything else? Okay, well then the only thing I wanted to point out was that if you go back to the grant and aid webpage, all of my contact information is on the bottom of that page. Yeah. And I can be reached right there by that email, that phone number. Email's the best way to contact me. Contact me with any questions or concerns you have. I always try to help you clubs out and assist you as the best I can. And if I don't know the answer to something, then I can definitely look into it for you. Thanks. I'd like to thank you all for joining us tonight. Thank you guys for having me. And I think this was pretty successful.
Thank you. Please
We'll
let us